I think Mother Nature hates me. It is attacking me on all fronts with its spore. Ugh. My sinuses are not happy with it, so this may be a little more growly than usual. A quick thank you to the T5 peeps. Bob the Dragon, Data Magnet, Cat Crab Lobster, Duck Machine, Try Again 95, Astray the Dreamer, Mesic, Budic Joel, German Chemist, Casper Arnholtz, and Chaos to Must. Thank you very much. But ever onwards, and on to the story. The Care and Feeding of Humans, Part 10. Humans have a natural instinct for where things are, when they are on an expedition. This includes large things like sunrise and sunset, but also little things like where the next biohazard lifeform will be coming from. No one is sure if this is instinct, psychic ability, or if the human senses are just sharp enough to pull that information together. The lesson is, you paid a lot of money to hire humans to be on your team. Listen to them. The Review of Ontological Species Studies, The Care and Feeding of Humans, The Strange Thing the Dog Did in the Night, published by Glass and Steel, The Care and Feeding of Humans. Translation Engine 3.14159. The captain met them at the shuttle dock. Do your best to collect samples. Do your best not to die. And remember, it's only been classed as a 2 or a 3 planet, and it looks like a 2 or 3 planet. So you know that means that somebody screwed up, and there will probably be lots of unexpected things that try to kill you. As a speech of inspiration or motivation, Dareth thought that it was lacking. As sane advice for an expedition, she thought that it was probably perfect. The captain then gravely shook his hands with each person on the mission, and then only the tail twitch revealed any excitement about being able to participate in this human ritual. Nara thought maybe she and the boys weren't the only ones excited to be working with the humans. Zoe checked and double-checked the droids, the food, and the other supplies. After she was done, Alan, who'd been doing something in the co-pilot seat with Quirrell supervising, came out and checked the food supplies. Dareth didn't even blink when Nate swung by a little later just to do a final check. Dareth showed Nate the food supplies and how they were stored on the shuttle, and then it was time to strap in. While waiting for the dock bay to open, Dareth reviewed her packing list in her mind. Then the shuttle shuttered, and it was too late to check and see if she really had packed that washcloth with the blue spirals. Landing was as simple as Dareth had come to expect from her nester. Alan was sitting up front with Quirrell, and Nate and Dareth were sitting next to the seats discussing the merits of Earth's musical group called Queen. There were no women in that group, Dareth asked. Oh, not royalty either, Nate confirmed. So why were they called Queen? Did the Queen and their country mind? Dareth asked. Nate scoffed. She was flattered they named themselves Queen. They were the best ever. Dareth sounded doubtful. We have some great music on our world, he pointed out. Dareth laughed. You've obviously never heard Queen. I'll play some for you tonight, and you'll agree that they are the best ever. Dareth tuned the rest of the conversation out, but she was looking forward to hearing Queen tonight. She glanced at Zoe. She and Zoe were in the last row of chairs, and Zoe's face was serene. She looked at the display for the shuttle view in front of her and seemed fine. Dareth was about to glance away when she noticed that Zoe's hands were firmly clasped around the armrests. The knuckles on her left hand were paler than the rest of her skin, and the armrest under her right hand seemed to be dented. Once they had landed, Zoe was the first to unbuckle. She stood up and said, Feel free to unbuckle, but do not disembark just yet. Nate, meet me in the cargo bay. Dareth trailed into the cargo bay, where Zoe and Nate were unpacking one of the droids. Zoe was syncing a combat with the droid and then turned to Nate and said, Okay, let loose. Zoe, what are you doing with that droid? Dareth asked. Just doing a little lightweight scouting. If there's nothing out there, the droid won't have a problem. If there's something out there, better the droid than us. Dareth nodded and helped Nate load the droid into the exit chute. Then they moved back into the main body of the ship. Quirrell, Zoe said, would you please put the droid camera up on the main screen? Oh good, movie night, Alan said. I wish I'd brought popcorn. Dareth moved into the cargo hold and came back with a bag which he handed to Alan. Is this, Alan said, as he looked in the bag. It is? Tariff, you whiny little Lynae. He showed everyone the back. Look, Tariff has popcorn. That's good, Zoe said, perching one hip on the armrest of the chair. You go ahead and enjoy. Her gaze was fixed on the screen, which showed the droid's camera as it moved about the area. At some point, she had unloaded a few weapons from the cargo hold. She passed one over to Nate and one to Alan, keeping two for herself, her eyes fixed on the screen. She strapped one to her leg and held the bigger one in her right hand. The droid moved over to the beach where the shuttle had landed, moving around the sand. It eventually moved out further and further away, until it reached the edge of the jungle. It stopped at the jungle edge and scanned into the trees. Nothing appeared to be moving, and there was nothing visible in the IR display. No life at all, Zoe said. Well, I guess that's to be expected when a big shuttle comes roaring down and lands in your backyard. Probably everything has to run away. Okay, everyone listen up. Here's the marching order. Droid, fanned out in front of me. Then Nerf, then Tariff, then Querif, Nate, and Alan. You fan out in the rear. Let's move out before whatever used to live here decides to come back home. If anyone hears anything, and I mean even the wind, you make sure that we know. Nate rolled his eyes. Zoe, no offense to the Riffs, but we're all here long before they do. Zoe glared at Nate. Nate, I'm telling you right now, drop the humans are badasses of the universe shtick. Everyone has skills to offer. Have I made myself clear? Nate gritted his jaws together, and Narif could see the muscles on his cheek flex. Yes, sir. Okay, Zoe said, apparently not even noticing Nate's anger. Let's move out. Querif, button this up as soon as we're out. I don't want anyone sneaking in while we're gone. If any of you get tired or start to hurt, let me know immediately. Understood? Sir? Yes, sir. Sure, no problem. Okay. Querif opened the rear hatch and they all walked out, roughly in formation that Zoe had described. Once on the beach, which was a firmer, harder grained sand than Nerif knew from her home beaches, Querif used his compad to close it back up. Let's go, Zoe said. Her voice was firm but quiet. Nerif shivered and tried to imagine anything that was scary enough to intimidate Zoe. Once they caught up with the droid at the edge of the jungle, Zoe pulled out her compad and sent some instructions. This droid is our scout. It's headed towards the ground station. It's going to mark out a trail for us, as long as we follow its trail. Zoe held up a compad with a map showing. A line of little red dots showed up everywhere the droid had wandered. We should be fine for some kinds of nasty surprises. Zoe patted the droid. Okay, little buddy, find us a good route. The droid beeped in acknowledgement of the order and trundled off. Querif raised his hands like he was asking a question in school. Yes, Querif. Shouldn't we be collecting samples for the expedition? Zoe shook her head. Not yet. On the way, we're just scouting out the lay of the land, what kinds of creatures live here, and taking the battery to the ground station. Once we're established at the ground station and on our way back, we'll collect as many samples for the scientists back on the ship as we can. Zoe held her larger weapon in her right hand, but not down low. It seemed that Zoe was ready to aim and shoot at any moment. Nerif looked and noticed that both Ellen and Nate had their weapons out too. She pulled her dagger out of its sheath and nodded to Querif and Tariff to do the same. They walked into the jungle, every sense alert and ready and waiting for what might come. And nothing happened. Tariff finally put his knife back in his sheath. Querif followed. A few minutes later, Nate and Alan didn't put their weapons away, but they carried them lower. Only Zoe seemed to still be alert, though. Nerif thought the fact that she was carrying her weapon with a prosthetic arm maybe meant that she wasn't tiring of carrying it. At one point, Zoe said, Did anyone see that? She pointed a little way to the right of the path, and there held her compad to scan the area. Alan followed suit, but Nate scanned all of the other areas around him. Ah, Nerif thought. This way nothing can sneak up on us by distracting everyone to look the wrong direction. Nothing visible to my scan, Zoe, Nate said. Mine either, Zoe said. It might have been the wind moving a branch, but I don't want to believe that for 1 second. Let's take a rest for a few minutes and see who's more patient. Nerif sat down on one of the porter droids with some relief. She hadn't realized that she was getting tired, and she had promised Zoe that she would let her know if that happened. I'm glad you called a rest, Zoe, Nerif said. I didn't realize that I was getting tired. Zoe glanced away from the combat for a moment and smiled at Narif. It can sneak up on you. Well, we'll stay here for a little bit. Narif used a combat too. She was scanning for all types of bioforms, but the only things showing up were plants. She remembered hearing about some plants on Earth that seemed like plants, but would catch and eat animals, and narrowed her eyes at the plants. If they were like those plants, she would make sure that they didn't catch her team. She was scanning the tree canopy when she got an alert on her compad. Zoe, she said very quietly, there's something in the trees. I think it's watching us. End of chapter. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed.